History reveals itself over the course of time. The English embarked to settle on American soil is no exception. Historians are constantly learning more about what the relationships were like during the early 1600s. The relationship formed between the Powhatan Indians and the English is arguably one of the most important relationships to the survival of the colony. According to historians that have helped develop Jamestown's settlement, in 1595, one of the most pivotal people in his story was born. This person was Pocahontas. Pocahontas served as an influential woman in her father's chief Powhatan tribes. She often visited each of the 32 tribes that her father ruled over. However, this is not the only reason she was so important.
Hi, I am currently standing in Jamestown 4 at the Pocahontas exhibit, and she was born in 1595, where she was the daughter of the chief of the Powhatan Indians, and she grew up to serve as a bridge between the English settlers and the Indians who also lived here at the time, just to help with their communications.
In 1607, the English settlers landed in the Chesapeake region of Virginia and began to create colonies. The English expected that there would be inhabitants of the land, but they did not consider the Powhatan Indian tribes. The English soon realized, after an Indian attack, that the Powhatans still used their settled land as hunting ground. The English then realized that they needed to befriend the Powhatan Indians because they knew the land better than anyone else. At this point, they began to trade with one another different goods and information.
Pocahontas visited lots of the Indian villages. The English said there were over 100 of them.
Oh, wow.
So she's going to visit the villages. She's going to, go to Jamestown or Jamesport. She'll be bringing food.
Hi, I'm standing in front of the monument of Captain John Smith, who in 1607 met Pocahontas, and they befriended each other and started their friendship. And at one point, people believed that Pocahontas' father, the chief, wanted to kill John Smith in some sort of ritual act. But now historians believe that, in fact, it was more of a trusting exercise, spiritual ritual for the Indians. The only problem was that John Smith didn't know that, and Pocahontas protecting him was actually part of the ritual instead of a mere, like, I want to save his life kind of situation.
According to Dr. Linwood Costello and Angela L. Daniel, in December of 1607, Captain John Smith was supposedly captured by the Powhatan Indians. At the time, he did not know that this would be a turning point for the communicative barrier that had come between the English and the Indians. In the midst of his captivity, Chief Powhatan, along with other Indians from the tribe, performed a series of custom rituals. This foreplay led Captain Smith to think he was in danger and that he was about to be killed by the Indians. However, as part of the sacred ceremony, Pocahontas threw her body over him in a protective manner. Smith interpreted this act of protection to be her saving his life from her father's plan to kill him. The entire ceremony was a way of befriending and entrusting Captain Smith. This also laid the foundation for Captain Smith's and Pocahontas' friendship. Contrary to modern-day depictions of Pocahontas and Captain Smith, they were not a secret love story. It was instead John Rolfe, an English tobacco farmer, that began to have feelings for Pocahontas.
In a few years after the starving time, this war is continuing. 1613, there's an English trading expedition going up the Potomac River on the northern neck of Virginia, near modern-day Washington. Captain of this English ship, called the Treasurer, is going to be trading with a friendly tribe called the Patawomecs. Finds out that Chief Powhatan's daughter, Pocahontas, is paying a visit to the Patawomecs. And working with the Patawomeck chief, they're going to lure Pocahontas on board the Treasurer, where she's then going to be brought here to Jamestown as a hostage. But this is going to be when Pocahontas is in captivity that she encounters John Rolfe for the first time. She's officially going to be trained in English ways. John Rolfe is going to write down that he's starting to feel feelings of love for Pocahontas, but he's got serious qualms about these feelings because what is Pocahontas not?
Christian.
She's not a Christian, right?
Another important fact about Pocahontas and John Rolfe's marriage is that he was not allowed to marry a non-Christian. Therefore, she studied the Anglican Catechism religion in order to be baptized under the name Rebecca in order to marry him properly. And that's where the bridge really began between the Indians and the settlers. Furthermore, Rebecca actually means the mother of two worlds, so even her name resembled her importance in mending those colonies and agreements.
And then John Rolfe is going to ask the permission of both the leadership of the fort and Chief Powhatan to marry Pocahontas. What's interesting about this, other Englishmen ask Powhatan's permission to marry some of his other daughters. He turns them all down, but he says yes to Rolfe. What might this marriage be an opportunity for both sides? What might it lead to, right? What's been going on that both sides are probably very tired of at this point? The war, right? It might bring an alliance. Think about
I am standing in the exact place where John Rolfe and Pocahontas got married. John Rolfe was a tobacco farmer in Virginia here, and after they got married, they moved back to England, and while they were there, Pocahontas became kind of an ambassador to the Native Americans here, and the Englishmen dressed her up in their clothes and kind of used her to show what the Native Americans were like and to get indentured servants to come to America. There were many positives to this untraditional marriage. Pocahontas was able to use her power between both the tribes and the English to meet peaceably with one another. She was able to create a type of peace treaty between the Powhatan Indians and the English settlers. Pocahontas' father eventually gave back the weapons his men had once stole from the English, and the English no longer invaded their land.
when you consider that it was the Virginia Company who published this image, what is this essentially? Propaganda, right? Exactly. Virginia Company had a message that they're trying to send here. What do you think the main message is? Civilization. Publishing this in England, trying to get people recruited to come over to the Jamestown colony saying, we can civilize the savages in Virginia. This is not just any savage, this is the daughter of the chief, right? She's dressed like us, she talks like us, she worships like us, and she's married to one of us. Something to consider, some historians have pointed this out, Pocahontas is not depicted as a European. She still very much looks like an American Indian. In other words, Pocahontas may have had a different message that she was trying to send with the image. She may be saying to the viewer, yes, I may dress like you, talk like you, worship like you, but at the end of the day, I am the daughter of Chief Powhatan. She is wearing pearl earrings, that's a symbol of Virginia, and she's holding ostrich feathers, which is a symbol of royalty. She's the daughter of the chief. Could have been multiple messages coming out with this image here. But as I said, probably the most important thing just to consider, arguably one of the most iconic women in American history. We don't know anything about her, really. At least not her perspective. Now, records indicate that Pocahontas was reluctant to leave England. It said that she wanted to stay there, but they are going to come back to Virginia.
Sadly, in 1617, Pocahontas fell ill on their way back to the Americas and passed away. However, her husband and son Thomas continued the journey. Unfortunately, Pocahontas' death ended the peace between the tribes and the English. Her son, who identified solely as English, fought with the Powhatan Indians. The ending of this era ended in family bloodshed and no peace agreements. This is just one example that depicts how important Pocahontas' role was in bridging the gap between the English and the Powhatan Indians. Through the 22 years that Pocahontas lived, she was involved in life-saving peace agreements. The events that she endured and even led helped to shape our understanding of the Powhatan Indians as well as the English people during the early 1600s.